Hello, everyone. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Motor City Metrics here at TigersMLReport.com. I'm Royal Still alongside me is Cameron, Uper, and Chris Brown on the bottom as I'm continuing to work on some new graphics as we're now part of the Believe Network. So if you go to believe.com/, shows Motor City Metrics, you'll find there, and a Tiger Minor League Report. And let us know what you think of the new logo, too, as we are continuing to I'm exploring AI in a lot of different ways with logo making and stuff like that. And so that was a little bit of a logo part graphics, my part AI assisting with that. So just because, like I said, just want to see AI has been fascinating in a lot of different ways. I don't know. Have you guys used Chat GPT or anything between the three of you?
Have not.
If I was still in college, I would, but I have no reason to use it right now.
the big thing right now is everybody on Twitter is using it to essentially create content. So they're creating like for example, I'm guilty of this where I used it for lions eating cheese in Green Bay or something like that as an example. So I found that kind of a good waste of time, a good time killer. Chris, you came up with some stuff on AI, didn't you?
Yeah, after you told me about it, I looked into it. Just some silly stuff, nothing, just to see how it worked. I was actually trying to use it again tonight, but in a very weird and lame way. I was trying to. I've got like an '80s party I'm going to go to this weekend,
Yeah.
and so I had an idea for a costume that would just show. It wasn't even a costume. It's like a hoodie with four different, like the backstroke, the breaststroke, freestyle, and the butterfly, and like a grid, and then below it just says "to rule the world." And the idea would be that somebody would go look at that and go, "Hey, what are those? Those are swimming strokes. Those are different strokes to rule the world." Was the hope. Yeah, but I couldn't find a good logo, so I had AI try to make it for me, and it was struggling with my instructions. But so whatever.
All right, I was gonna say it's clever, and Mr. Drummond would be proud of you. And maybe 5 people get that reference in here. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Philip Drummond, Conrad Bain. You know, he had a brother named Bonar.
Yeah,
Bonar Bain.
Didn't they do a whole SCTV episode about it?
Probably. I don't know.
They did like his evil twin brother or something like that. And so, yeah. All right, we're aging ourselves. So coming up today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the new TV broadcasting person for the Tigers, and which shocked everybody. Tigers making a few, as expected, 40-man roster moves, and they also add another outfielder because apparently they had an obsession with adding people they like, and we'll get to that. Somebody they added from Houston, but yeah. So the Jason Benetti hire that came literally. It was the way the Tigers. I got to give credit to Tigers' social media team for how they tweeted that out. So they tweeted out a clip of him doing a Tigers Yankees game. And so then kind of left the speculation. And then within an hour, it was actually within 10 minutes, it seemed like it was.
A few minutes.
Yeah, a few minutes. And like Chris and I were talking about this with Jason Beck on the Tiger Minor League podcast, which you can find on the Believe Network as well. It was they shot their shot and they went and they got it. I mean, it shows kind of like the brass balls the Tigers had there. And I'll start with you, Cameron. How shocked were you?
I mean, I was pretty shocked. They took him away from his hometown team. Like, he's talked about it many times about how he wanted to grow up and be a commentator for the White Sox. And to not only pull him away from the White Sox because of money, but because he feels like the organization's going in a better direction than the White Sox, is unbelievable. I was stunned by the quotes that were coming out from him about why he chose the Tigers.
What about you, Uper?
Yeah, I've the stunning part is this: when Shepard was let go, I fully expected, as this evolved, to not really care who they hired. You know what I mean? Because I just assumed it'd be some team's second announcer. It would be some guy from another team, another just generic dude. giving the play-by-play. I didn't expect to be shocked. I didn't expect to be really excited about who they named, because as someone who lives in Iowa and there's a lot of blackout situations, I have watched a lot of Benetti and Stone because I do get them here as one of the few teams I do get. So I have always liked that guy from day one, way before there was any speculation of him coming to Detroit. So to see his name there was a real stunner. And again, there's no way I thought I'd be excited about who they hired. And all of a sudden, boom, that happened. So it was pretty cool. I mean, that was a really nice get for Detroit. Again, he can only call home runs. He can't hit home runs. So, I mean, they have work to do, but it's going to make for a much better viewing experience next year. I will be listening to the opposition broadcast far, far less.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I knew
go ahead,
a
Chris.
lot of people who would listen to the White Sox broadcast when they would play the White Sox, just because it's significantly better. I mean, I don't know, looking back, it almost feels like this must have been kind of in the works when they fired Matt Shepard. Maybe not. Maybe that's some sort of meddling. I don't know how it works in announcers, but yeah, like, I think the top two on anybody's list would have been Benetti and Joe Davis. And I wouldn't have thought they would get either of them. Honestly, I thought maybe they had a better chance at Davis because he's from Michigan. He's the Dodgers announcer now, but that's a plum gig, and you're living in LA. It's just tough to top. But then Chicago's a pretty awesome city too. And if that's the team that you grew up rooting for, it remains somewhat shocking to me. And so it's enjoyable to do that to a division rival, even though we have many friends in the Chicago White Sox baseball community. They all hate their own team, it seems. At least they hate the ownership, I would say, which is a bad place to be. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. And who knows? I mean, he could be broadcasting these TV games for the next 10, 15, 20 years. This could be the voice of an entire generation of Tigers fans. So it's a pretty big move.
Chicago sucks.
That was a lot of the vibe I was picking up on from Chicago fans alone. I mean, it was it was one of those things where I saw it happen and I was stunned. And like I said it with Jason, but I was also just impressed sitting in the press conference with them, and I was sending quotes to Cameron and to all you guys, or some of the audio to you too as well, Chris, just how well spoken he was. And you really, when people we know a lot of people on White Sox Twitter who are sending me DMs and saying, hey, make sure you take care of him. This is unfortunate. White Sox fans have been just the amount of cynicism and everything the last few years has just continuing to creep in. And then when Jerry Reinsdorf was saying, well, I don't think he's funny, and it's continuously, he just doesn't, I don't think he really gives a rat's ass what people think of him anyway, but it just shows how out of touch that guy is. I mean, you talk about a guy that you had Hawk Harrelson. Hawk Harrelson, by far, to me, was one of the worst announcers I've ever heard. Mercy. All these stupid little things he said. Can't stand him. Can't stand him. Yeah. And by the way, Detroit Degenerate says, talk about strokes. And I finally got my wife to watch this podcast with me this time around. Nicely done. Hi, Mrs. Degenerate. Hopefully you're still enjoying the podcast.
Mrs. Degenerate. Ellen Degenerate. I will say that I would prefer, at least Hawk was unique. And his sayings, they may have been annoying or whatever, but they were kind of unique. And I would take that over kind of like a milquetoast announcer. But Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't seem to care one bit about what the fans want. That's how you end up with Tony La Russa as manager instead of AJ Hinch, even though your press department was all ready to send out the release. And that's how you lose. Yeah, that's how you lose Jason Benetti, beloved announcer there.
Yeah.
So their loss is our gain.
I can't believe did Reinsdorf really say that he's not funny? I missed that.
So there was a Chicago area like radio local talk show sports guys who said that's basically and they seemed reasonably well informed. So I mean, that's what that's based on. I don't think he came out and said that publicly, but they were the ones who said that.
Well, and who knows how often he listens to it for that matter. But because I'll tell you this, as someone who does listen to them, I think he has a pretty cool sense of humor. It's just more of a dry sense of humor. He's not a yuck yuck guy. Okay, he's not going to tell a knock knock joke, but he says some funny things. He's not afraid to take chances. Like he sings the Nationwide jingle with Steve Stone in the fourth inning every night. Nationwide is on your side. You know, they sing that together. They took a chance, and now everybody loves it. But he's also someone who he'll hit on statistics, and he can talk that talk. But I think as we'll see over time too, he can just straight up call the game without even doing any of that. So I love that guy. I think he's been great. I think it's just a home run.
Yeah, and also the pop culture references too is
yes.
Yeah, I love that, and
Well,
I don't miss this.
That ball hit high and deep. Stretch. Get on back there. They look up. You can put it on the board. Yes. Yes.
No, if people haven't seen, if people haven't seen, there are a bunch of great clips of Benetti doing both basketball and baseball with Bill Walton. And Bill Walton's, talking about like I can see through time and I can taste color, and Benetti's just hanging with him and telling him all, talking about how high he is and stuff. But yeah, like he's he's a real pro. You listen to him. He had an awesome call. I retweeted it this weekend of the Utah-Washington football game, which was an awesome football game, and then the ridiculous play where a guy intercepted the ball and then dropped it on the 1 yard line, and Benetti acted the way he should. Like announcer, he was incredulous, but also like excited and explained everything. He's just a pro, and so I'm super excited.
This is Jason Benetti and Bill Walton.
Benetti and Bill Walton. Scott Van Pelt, my hero. What a show you've got.
Thank you, Bill. There he is with Spencer Torkelson, #1 college prospect, and he's going to be the catcher, and that's a Jerry Garcia tie. So Bill gives it.
All right, I thought it was going to be the audio, so that's my bad. I queued this up incorrectly. This is where
It's all good.
Yeah, but no, because I love hearing Bill. I can hear Bill Walton talk like his documentary, by the way, is very self-serving, but nevertheless, it's still Bill Walton is a guy who he worked his ass off. He took speech classes to get better because he used to have a stuttering problem, and I gotta give him a lot of props. Here it is.
And this is my great friend, the true giant among us, a brilliant genius, one who's able to create beauty out of darkness. And your name?
It's Jason Still.
Okay, and so I'm Bill, and we're in California. What more could you ask for? White Sox and Angels at the Diamond in the park. I love timelessness. You're timeless.
Well, the one thing
I've been dead for quite a few years.
And we all may be by the end of the night.
You're very young. You have no idea.
All right, yeah. If Bill Walton comes to Comerica Park to call a Tigers game, you better bet. He's like, Roger Castillo, I don't know nothing about you.
Throw it down, big man.
Throw it down, big man. Throw it down. All right.
Anyway,
but yeah, it's a great move all around, and so I definitely think that it's especially there's going to be so many good calls and Matt Shepard. I liked what Jason said about Matt Shepard too. There's a friend of his. He made sure that he made a point to say something class act, and Matt Shepard can be heard on U of M games. And again, I had no problem with Matt Shepard. It is what it is. And so, but the fact that people were kind of celebrating his demise, I just, again, humanity's, after watching the Twin Flames documentary on Netflix,
based in Michigan, right?
Yeah. The guy lives in Michigan. The douchebag who thinks he's Jesus lives in Michigan. So there's a famous, speaking of which, and this is, I think somebody's gonna have to drink because there's a famous psychology book called The Three Christs of Ypsilanti, and it's somebody went into a mental institution and there were three different people there who claimed to be Jesus, and the hypothesis was like, hey, we'll get all three of them in the room and then they'll all realize that none of them are Jesus and they'll get healthy, and it didn't work. They all just claimed the other two were frauds. So all right.
Should we touch on he was hired by the Detroit Tigers and not Bally Sports Detroit?
Yes, we should. That's a great point to bring up, Cameron. That's also the big key part of this is that Dickerson also agreed to go on television too, which before in the past he was kind of iffy about, but he gets to slide over there, and that's a big deal. And then for the radio side, they still haven't announced. It looks like they're going to go with different color commentary because during the press conference they were asked about that, and they said they're going to announce it later this spring. So they could be finalizing something.
That's going to be really interesting because I don't have a massive Twitter presence, right? I rarely get like 100 likes on something, but one thing I did put out the other day that did get well over 100 was, I don't care if this next guy or girl, whatever, has Tiger ties in the past. I don't need an 06 Tiger or anything like that. I just need someone who is awake, who's witty, who has chemistry with Benetti, who can tell us something we don't know about the game, who maybe likes the current game but can appreciate the former game, something like that. And if they can find that person, I don't care if they topped out playing AA for the Orioles. Okay, big deal. I hope they go by broadcasting skills versus family ties. I don't know if anybody agrees with that. If they think team ties are important, I'm not sure.
I agree, but with that being said, Andy Dirks was amazing on the radio this year. So,
if they find the right guy and he does have Tiger ties, great. I mean, that's even better. But I'm just saying that shouldn't be a determinant to me.
Dirks just sounded like every other. I don't know. He played up a Southern draw, even though he's from Kansas. I don't know. Like I don't know. I didn't really care for Dirks. I really didn't. Sorry. I
don't know how other cities may do it, but I think pretty universally the color analyst almost always has some ties to an organization. It's in every city. Since I've been growing up, it was it was George Kell and Al Kaline when I was a kid. It was Gibby was with Josh Lewin in the early 2000s, I think it was.
Yep.
Rod had a 45 game or 45 day stint with the Tigers. That was a bit strained, but they were able. He was on the '84 team, so they could swing it. So I don't know. I think for whatever reason, that's just the formula. I'm with you. I would like to just get anybody who's fun and entertaining and wants to come talk baseball. But I have a feeling it's going to be Craig Monroe, and then I know people like Alex Avila and like Granderson and then like Maben and like all those guys. So maybe that'll be a group of them. I like Dan Petrie.
Peaches, yeah.
I think it's still going to have that Tigers flavor.
Yeah, and look, it's just again, I think for Dirk, the reason because there's some people that probably like Dirks, and I understand that and I respect that. I don't know. I think sometimes from my perspective, I always feel like we always have that kind of same. Like we have sometimes the same. It sounds like the same voices. You know what I mean? Like what I liked about Austin Jackson when he was in there, it was different. Austin Jackson, what was great was I asked him when he was in the press box. We got to ask him questions. He said he'd never done that before. Like, he could have fooled me. He was a natural. I thought Austin Jackson was a nice change of pace. He added different mentality. Todd Jones, Tyler in the chat said, yeah, please no Todd Jones. Yeah, Todd Jones, by the way, doesn't wash his hands when he uses the bathroom. Just a fun fact for you.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
That's a more colorful commentary than I wanted to hear. But yes, I if we were taking auditions, then Raj, you and I, well, I'm happy to throw my hat in the ring. Go up there and talk some baseball.
You know what would be, I think, a good fit, though? I mean, I do like Curtis Granderson quite a bit. But if you're talking about non-conventional, not ties to the 06 team or the 84 team, or for that matter, I think they would have to kind of think about it from a sense of somebody who I think Tiger fans would have somewhat. I mean, I know Tiger fans would probably want somebody like Don Kelly because it's the obvious choice. People just by default, I already know Don Kelly or Brandon Name, something like that. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. To me, whoever they team up with Jason, I think Jason's going to get a variety of people to come in there too, which is going to be great. And from a national perspective, that's also huge for Detroit because if you get Bill Walton in there or whoever he's worked with before in the past, that was awesome. And Cecil Fielder, I did not hear when Cecil Fielder was in the booth. I have to check that out.
I didn't hear that. I know he came to West Michigan. I don't know if it was last year or a couple of years ago, and like did a couple innings, but I didn't think he was actually doing that for a living.
Let's just say good thing it wasn't FCC regulated because he dropped a good amount of swears in his commentary that day. It was great. It was great, but probably not
that's what you're
something you
looking
want
for.
in there every day.
Put it on a 10-second delay and beep the hell out of it. That's all right.
Yeah, there's probably I'm surprised there's not another former like I think who was it the one that did the game with Greg Gagna
Doug Fister came in there for a game and had never done anything, and he was a little bit iffy.
Yeah, it was a little rough at first. Yeah, it was kind of it wasn't the marksman as he's known for, or sharpshooter, or whatever that terminology is. But either way, no, I think they might go in a different direction. We'll see. I know Dirks was trying really hard to impress everybody in the radio side. The guy who did the radio this year from Southfield, what's that gentleman's name?
Bobby Scales?
Yeah, Bobby Scales is pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby Scales added. I liked his perspective in adding his baseball knowledge too. I thought Bobby Scales did a really good job in the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, he strikes me as somebody kind of from that Rod Allen camp where like he didn't have much of a playing career, so he actually went about it as a broadcaster and came up that way. And he also had some other stuff going on that was interesting. I thought like I was coaching or like camps or something like that. But yeah, I thought he did a good job too. So I wouldn't be mad at him. Oh, Sharon Moore, huh?
Yeah, Sharon Moore. Is that the guy from?
He is Michigan. He was Michigan's interim head coach the other day.
The gentleman who was crying. Yes.
He praised the Lord and then swore 2 seconds later. It was outstanding.
But either way, yes. So here's the 40-man moves for today. So the Wilmer Flores, no surprise, and Dylan Dingler added to the 40-man roster. Tigers designated Brendan Hathaway and Freddie Pacheco for assignment, although I did hear that Pacheco will more likely be sign back. He's not scheduled to pitch again until August. So he's still rehabbing from an injury. And the Tigers signed a former, it's funny. It's a former, I'm trying to play with this a little bit better. Oh, no, that doesn't work either. It looks horrible. That looks horrible. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Attention to I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm trying to fix this to where it looks better on the screen. I just got to get rid of this. No, but yeah, the Tigers signed. Is it Madras?
Bly Madras?
Yes, thank you.
Bly Madras?
Yes.
Madras, yeah.
Yeah.
What was your highlight of the first Bly Madras era in Detroit?
I
think when he got let go.
I liked when he showed up on Baseball America's list of Tigers prospects after he was already with the Astros.
I forgot about that.
But
yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, I have nothing to say about Bly Madras. We've seen him in the minors. He's put up decent stats in most of his years in the minors. Nothing spectacular. I don't know. I think it's just a minor league depth move. I don't know why now was the time to do that. The 40-man moves were both very expected. Right? We came into the offseason thinking they had to add Montero, Flores, and Dingler, and that's who they added, and nobody else. There were a couple of guys we thought that might get a look, and there may have a couple of guys who do get selected. Andrew Magno was the main one I was thinking of as a lefty reliever with a pretty good, low 90s fastball. His touch 95, 96, but spins a couple really good breaking balls. And it's an interesting kind of arm slot for a lefty. It's a little bit over the top. You just don't see it very often. And his main issue is walks, but he pitched really well this year. And I could see somebody, teams always want that lefty reliever who can get a couple guys out. So I think it wouldn't shock me if he gets taken. We even heard about a scout from a different organization who loved him when we were out in Erie. So we'll see. But yeah, nothing shocking there, at least not to me.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised about anything either. I don't think. But what about you, Cameron? I mean, was there anything that really, anything that stood out really at all?
No, this morning I posted on the Motor City Metrics Twitter. There's a few obvious names that are expected to be protected: Flores and Dingler. Does anyone else get protected? ? No one else. Someone said Campos. I think people have to remember that if another team selects one of our players, they have to keep them on their 40-man roster and in the majors for the season. So Campos won't get taken, and then no one else had anyone else they thought would get protected. So I guess Dingler and Flores it is.
somebody was talking about Jake Holton too because of his numbers. I believe it was Jerry from
Jerry mentioned it.
Yeah, Jerry mentioned it, and that was actually not bad of an idea. Trey Cruz is another a possibility, but he could. So how it works, and I put this in my Motor City Bengals piece, was I was also thinking about players that could be added to the 38-man roster on the minor league side of things, because we saw this last year where the Tigers lost a pitcher that they originally grabbed from Baltimore, the guy, the toilet seat guy, Chris. What's the guy's name?
Was that last year or was that a couple of years ago?
Maybe it was a couple of years ago now.
I've forgotten his name, but yeah, he had a funny. Last year, I think that was Dane Myers. I think he was the minor league Rule 5 guy, or was he a big league Rule 5 guy? But he was a minor league Rule 5 guy.
I think so.
And then he made it to the big leagues. Yeah, you never know. Like I could see that happening. Maybe to Andrew Navigato. He's a similar kind of player to Dane Myers. I know that they loved him there in Erie, and he was kind of the heartbeat of that team until he got slammed into by Jose Tena. But
that's such a dirty play. I'm sorry, that was such a stupid dirty play.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, they don't announce who they're putting on the minor league roster, so that's the stuff that we just find that out when we find it out later. But yeah, I don't know. I thought that we might see another move today. We didn't see a ton of them. Usually on this day when you have the deadline to add guys to the 40-man, you see a couple teams make trades where they'll trade. They've got too many guys they need to add, so they'll trade somebody already on their 40-man to a team that's got room, and then pick up a prospect they like who doesn't have to be protected yet. But we only saw one of those today, I think, and it was between Milwaukee and Cleveland. Was it
Philly?
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
It's interesting. I thought that Hennepy was the obvious guy that was going to get, the axe. He looked, when he came up, he just looked like another reliever that as a guy who you call up to play out the string of a losing year, right? So I don't think that's a big deal. My question for you guys is this: how many years in a row have the Tigers made a Rule 5 selection, and is this the year they don't?
That I want to say 6 or 7 years in a row now.
I think so too.
But yeah, I think they'd have the 10th pick this year, and so it wouldn't shock me at all if they don't take somebody. I mean, you might have a reliever you like at that spot. I can't think of anybody else that. But yeah, so you got Englert last year. Who did they take the year before? Was that?
Was that Badu? Was it Badu the year before?
No, there's a year in between.
No.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't take somebody that year. They must have.
I think they did.
Yeah. Why am I drawing a blank? But yeah, I mean they had David McKay, they had Victor Reyes. It may have been the year before Reyes, and then they didn't take anybody. But even
it was a lefty. It was a lefty pitcher, according to Bada Boom in the chat. Ronnie Garcia.
Ronnie Garcia.
There you go.
Who they just released this year. Yeah. So they used the number 1 Rule 5 pick in that. So yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if they don't use somebody this year. I think they have enough. I mean, it always depends on who's available, but 10 picks in,
knowing Scott Harris, they're going to pick someone.
You're lucky if you get one solid, interesting, not even solid, like one major leaguer out of each Rule 5 draft for all the picks. So, I mean, we'll see. Maybe. Well, I thought that they were creative with Englert, and for a while it looked like a really good move, and then he kind of got exposed as the season went along. But that's what you expect from a Rule 5 guy. Well, it'll be interesting to see if they can do anything to increase his velocity heading into this season. But maybe another interesting kind of off the radar guy like that.
Yeah, it does. And the plus side to him is that he could be starting in Toledo as a starter, because he was a starter at AA. For AA Texas, or for their, I think is it Frisco? Is it the Rough Riders? I think, can't remember right now. But either way, he does have 4 different pitches, and he was limited to 2. So the Tigers could, if you look at it from in the grand scheme of things, if you're gonna move up Madden to to the AAA, put him down there in Toledo to start the season, it's not bad. That's a much better rotation than whatever that Toledo's rotation this year was brutal. I'm sorry. It was
Yeah.
that was some brutal games to go into, especially when I remember how many times I go to a game and they're just the contact off some of the pitchers was just hard, and then they would bring out a trio of relievers, and it ended up being bad news. But yeah, I don't think, as far as looking at some of the names that are left available, there was a name that was designated for assignment today, and that was Cal Quantrill for Cleveland, which I thought was interesting. And that's an arm that I wouldn't mind the Tigers, once he clears waivers, and if he clears waivers, I wouldn't mind the Tigers taking a look at it and see for possible depth. I don't know what you guys think about him, but
I suspect that somebody's going to work out a trade to get him because he was a solid back into the starter 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Last year it was rough, but somebody's going to think that they can figure out something there. And I was just looking it up that there wasn't a Rule 5 draft in 2021. I forgot because of the lockout. They didn't have one. It was only the minor league one. So that's why we missed one. But anyway, I don't know what you guys think about Quantrill.
There are far worse things to give a try. I mean, I think you're right. You might have to make a trade and swing something their way for it, but that'd be fine. I also saw that like the Miami DFA'd their minor league hitter of the year, which people were a little bit surprised about. So I don't know if that guy has any kind of future or not, but that's kind of a thing where, they're changing front offices a little bit and somebody may have gotten lost in the shuffle. That might be a guy to, at least put one eye on and see if that's something you want to do.
Yeah, because they made room for a reliever, a really talented reliever that they have in there that who was, I believe, Anthony. Is it Chris
Maldonado? Was that the guy?
Maldonado. Yeah, that's the guy I was talking about. Yeah, had a really good year last year for Jacksonville, and he's got some really good stuff. Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, Royals released Josh Statham out. Yeah, that surprised me a little bit too. And by the way, Blood Right, thank you for the $5. I forgot to mention this.
Blood Right, thank you.
Exquisite.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, Stamont is, the Royals are on a lot as well. I mean, he's inconsistent, but he has outings where you're like, wow. I mean, he has wow outings where he really looks dominant. And then he has another outings where he's in the middle of the plate, and it doesn't look good. So that's the kind of guy, maybe the arm is live enough you want to work with something like that. See if you get the best out of him.
This is it's a good excuse for me to make fun of my friend Rob in our fantasy keeper league when he dropped Cedric Mullins to pick up Stamont.
Ooh.
Was it 3 years ago, or like right when Mullins took off?
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, Stamont had thoracic surgery.
Oh,
Michael Meyer for the win.
Thank you, Michael Meyer. Yeah, you're right. They never come back the same. That is something.
Never mind.
Yeah. As far as lefties go, Cameron, did you see any lefties that were DFA? Because I didn't see anybody that stood out lefty wise.
No, I didn't get a chance to look at the DFA list since 6.
Yeah, it's been I know that. Trying to think of I was looking at some of the guys that left for Rule 5, and a lot of them were really young. Like there's just one guy in Toronto that I was looking at that's 20 years old. That's got some good strikeout numbers, but he might be too raw.
Yeah, I mean, you sent me earlier that there were some teams left some guys with familiar names. Like, I haven't paid a ton of attention, but Ian Seymour was a lefty out of Virginia Tech, I think, that the Rays didn't protect. I think he's been injured, but he did pitch last year, and I'd be curious what his stuff looks like now. I haven't looked into it, but if they want a lefty, I'm sure there are plenty out there that they can grab in the Rule 5. It's just, does anybody have the stuff or the control to stick on the roster more than somebody you can get free agency? I don't know.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this question about before I forget. I wanted to ask, with Wilmer Flores and Dingler added to the roster, do you think that Flores will be a arm they use to get a bat for something like in the Gorman sweepstakes, perhaps?
Sure, I'm sure they would like to.
Sure.
If they get a bat with some of their minor league pitching depth, I wouldn't be shocked if they're shopping him or any of their other kind of youngish, fringy starters. But I don't know. It's fun.
Is he going to bring back anything good? Is he that guy? You guys have debated here how many times he's starter or reliever. Nobody knows. I just don't think that's a big market.
I think if you put Flores in a package with a couple other components, I think that it could work out that way if they decided to trade him. But it's interesting because just hearing about some of the things that happened this year within the organization about Flores, he did lose a little bit of velocity. He did come back strong towards the end of the year to a certain extent. But in his championship, his only start in the championship series, he got rocked a little bit, but that was the theme of him all year. He would kind of start off rough and then he would eventually get into it a little bit, but swing and miss stuff wasn't the same as it was last year. So, but there's been also, again, stuff that off the record stuff that's just like could suggest that maybe so it can be traded. So, or it could not be traded, but maybe it's just not.
You mentioned Nolan Gorman.
No, I was talking about Wilmer Flores. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think you said something about the Gorman sweepstakes.
You did.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
If you're going to trade Nolan Gorman, what are you asking for? You own Gorman. What do you want? What do you want back? That's. I wish I viewed it from that. Right. I just think first they're going to ask for Job, right? That might not be realistic, but that's what they're going to do.
Yeah,
they're going to work back from there.
Or they might ask for Skubal. They think if you're going to start somewhere, you want a young pitcher who can help your rotation, and you start at the top. And you don't want to give us Skubal, and what about this Jack and Job fella? Or I think Tigers fans would probably part with Matt Manning. Some would, maybe some wouldn't.
Yeah,
would that be enough for the Cardinals? I don't know.
If we're gonna play the let's make a deal trade here with the Cardinals, a realistic trade looking package for St. Louis. With terms of what I would think the Tigers also would get a pitcher back in return too. I only say that because if they're gonna maybe like a reliever or something to that effect or what have you, but if you're getting so you're looking at probably 2 top 10 Tiger prospects. Definitely. It could be even a hitter. So it could be somebody along the lines that could be on the lower levels that the Cardinals may like, because Peoria is in the Midwestern League. Maybe they saw somebody in the Midwest League. Who knows? But Flores would probably be part of it. Flores, maybe Job, or maybe Manning would definitely be part. You have to give up some prospect capital. You can't do this, MLB, the show, where you're forced to trade because you can have the overseeing and do that. You can't do it here in this case. But I'm still I know Tyler O'Neill was an idea, but yeah, as Detroit Degenerate mentioned, they got Mark Canha for it. And to be fair, O'Neill's gotten a lot of injuries, been banged up quite a bit. But I don't know about Cameron. In terms of let me ask you this. Would you think, do you think even a trade like that is even feasible? Because the Tigers haven't made a big blockbuster trade where they've given up quite a bit of prospect capital, which they do have for the first time in a long time, for somebody like Gorman.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Cardinals, they need pitching. They needed pitching last year, and it's only gotten worse in the offseason. So if they want Matt Manning and Wilmer Flores for Gorman, and then throw in another wild card in there as a third pitcher to give them, I do that. Let's be honest. Wilmer Flores is probably out of the bullpen, right? Is everyone agreeing on that, or?
It's just been a really interesting sort of career path for him, because that was the assumption when they got him, and it was the assumption early on when he was pitching out of the bullpen in Lakeland and in the Arizona Fall League. It's his delivery's too wonky. He can't throw enough strikes. And then the next year, he was throwing tons of strikes. And even this year, he threw tons of strikes. But suddenly his stuff wasn't as good. So now it's become it's not a control issue so much as it's do we need to put him in the bullpen just so we can maximize his value, because the stuff isn't there when he's starting. So I think, yeah, now I'm leaning more toward the bullpen, whereas last year I was like, no, I think he's a starter. Who knows? Maybe they can find his velocity again. But I
Could
think, yeah,
you
most likely he and Montero end up in the bullpen if they make the big leagues.
could you sell the Cardinals on, hey, Wilmer Flores is a major league ready pitcher out of the bullpen, and then here's Matt Manning as well. He's a major league starter. Ignore his BABIP, but he's a starter.
Yeah, I mean, I you can try, but I'm Gorman to me is a little bit redundant. Like I know he's come up and done some, he hit some bombs in the big leagues and he had a really nice stretch and then he cooled off a little bit. But it's like, is he that much different than Colt Keith or Jace Young? He's kind of a second baseman, third baseman who's defensively challenged, is going to hit for some power. I think Colt Keith has a chance to be every bit as good, if not better, than Gorman, and you're not giving up anything to have him other than some money if you bring him up on opening day. So and somebody else had tweeted at us and mentioned Brendan Donovan as an option from the Cardinals, which kind of I found a little bit more interesting because he's more the player that I think the team needs right now. Although I was really hoping that he would, he's another lefty. I just feel like they need a right-handed hitter, somebody who
Yes.
can hit hit like 280. I know we don't care about batting average anymore, but all the right-handed hitters on the lineup are, you got Torque, you got Rogers, you got Baez. Who am I missing? Canna. That's basically it, right?
Veerling.
Yeah, Veerling. Veerling theoretically could
Jake
hit for
Rogers.
some average, but yeah, Rogers, Torque, Baez, Canna, those guys are all going to hit like 250 or below. Canna might hit 260, and he gets on base a ton. That's great. And Torque hits and Rogers hit for power, and Javi Baez plays defense. But it would be nice to have somebody who could just, a right-handed hitter, doesn't need crazy power, but gets on base a little bit, hits for some pop, and can hit you 280. I feel like that'd be a nice addition to just the way this lineup is constructed. But
Maybe this could
know.
segue to Yoop this morning asking about Tim Anderson. Or is everyone off Tim Anderson?
No,
Don't-
and that's a
don't want him?
good segue into Tim Anderson. Yeah, but the question is then, I think Tiger fans would hate Tim Anderson more than Javier Baez based off his behavioral, his quote unquote his behavior, because the fans don't like his bravado, don't like his cockiness and compare himself to Jackie Robinson, and there's all these other things that go with it. And I think he's just personally, yes, what he does very well in Comerica Park. He hits the gaps extremely well, but I just don't see where, as far as where you're going to put him. I mean, defensively, Baez is a much better defender than Anderson is, and I know it's just you create another. I think you would create another problem personally.
And I put that out there just not because I'm sold on the idea by any stretch, but let's look at the guy. I mean, he hit 300 or better several straight seasons. He's basically had one terrible year, right? So do you think he's shot based off of 1 year? Or is there, does he have something? He just turned 30. He's going to be 31 this year. Is that something, if he wants to take a 1 or 2 year prove it deal to reestablish his reputation, that could be a guy who could be a pot of gold if he comes back. But certainly last week we had Crystal O'Keefe on, and she was pretty upfront that some of the problems were attitude related and clubhouse related, and that's always something that we don't know from afar. And you have to hope the Tigers front office had some kind of handle on that if they were to make a move that way. But I think Tim Anderson is still the athletic guy. I think that guy's still in there. I would not let one terrible season, maybe he was nursing an injury or something, really say, hey, he's done.
Well, and that's what I do worry about that, because I think 2022, I think he was injured a bunch, and he hit pretty well in 2022, but the power disappeared, and power, he didn't hit for power or average last year. Right. I've always thought of him as he's a brilliant hitter. Like I remember, you just terrorized Matthew Boyd he would move around in the batter's box, basically predicting what the pitcher was going to throw and attack it. I wouldn't hate him. The only thing is that I don't think there's a chance in hell that Scott Harris would look at somebody who walks. He's got a 4.4% walk rate over the last
Sure.
like 4 seasons. It is the same walk rate as Javi Baez, and I just don't think Scott Harris would take a player like that. I might if he's going to hit 300 every year, but I think it's basically like a non-starter for Harris. But who knows?
You're probably
If
right.
you play him at second base, that's a right-handed. He had a little bit of speed. You can get the pop back. It would be an interesting addition, but I don't see it.
Yeah, and the downside is if last year's Tim Anderson is the real Tim Anderson now you have another Javi Baez. You got 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
that.
and I like what Ty Cobb said in the chat, in the YouTube chat. He says fans will like Baez if he hits, and Tiger fans will also like Anderson if he hits. If he can get him on 1-year deal, he's worth the risk.
Yep.
Yeah. But at the same,
no such thing as a bad 1-year deal, right?
No, you're right. There's not. And I think you look at the clubhouse atmosphere in Chicago has a lot to do with it. The White Sox, the whole the whole Tony La Russa thing was just a really bad idea. And just a lot of, I think, it's one of those things where it could be a combination of the media. It could be a lot of things. I don't know. But I personally myself, I think that addressing more power. I think that the Tigers, yes, they need hitting across the board. They do need a hitter, like Chris was mentioning, 280, a right-handed hitter, no doubt. But I wouldn't mind I wouldn't mind some more power in this lineup, because as much as we enjoyed the power increase from this year, from last year was one of the worst in team history. I still think that if they have another right-handed power bat to complement the lineup, who could actually, can also play defense. Because if you look at it this way, if you're going to bring Cole Keith up to play second base, and you're not sure about his defense now, the same thing with Justin Henry Malloy, you're going to need a solid defender. At this point, and I might sound like I'm being old school here, because kind of what Zach McKinstry does is a defender. But if they signed somebody that was, was a better defender than an offensive player, I wouldn't mind that either, because I just think I think last year the Tigers defensively had some lapses where I think if they had a better defender there, they would have won at least a couple more games. I'm not sure how much more, but you have to really continuously look at your defense. And I know Scott Harris is doing that now, but I don't know.
So you're saying a third baseman like I'm blanking on his name, played for the Guardians and the Yankees.
Chella?
I'm sorry?
Urshela?
Yeah, somebody like that. Gio Urshela. That type of player, is that who you're, he's a kind of a glove first guy, but he hits a couple of homers.
Yeah, that's a guy I'm thinking of. And that's a guy who is a good utility bat too. Because if you're not going to bring back, also, hopefully they bring back Raul Ibanez. Ibanez was at one point a 2-WAR player. So Ibanez did the job too, but or Andy Raul Baez as well. Andy Baez. What was I thinking of? I was thinking of Raul.
Yeah, Raul Ibanez was a long time Mariner and Royal, and I think he's like an assistant at the MLB front office.
He was doing the MLB draft in the second round too. I think it was too, but
he also looked a little bit like a Martian. He was funny looking dude.
Yeah, he had one of those Polanco heads.
Oh yeah, big time. No, and here's the thing. It's just I think of that Gino. Is it
Gio Urshela?
Gio Urshela is a good example of that, and I think that the Tigers could be something like that too. Tyler brings up Haisu Kim. He's a Scott Harris player, and that's actually a good suggestion too, because the Padres, I don't know when they're going to start making the moves. By the way, Fernando Tatis won the Gold Glove. That's a tremendous turnaround. And no, Ben, I will not trade you in fantasy baseball. Quit asking me for him, Uper. Or Tiger League, or I was making a Tiger League joke about.
I know.
Yeah.
I offered you Bobby Witt Jr. for him once, and you said no.
Hey, I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I might get some crap for it later. But anyway, so I did want to bring up free agent pitchers a little bit, because this is kind of the top I noticed I did not put Eduardo Rodriguez on here because obviously he will not be coming back to Detroit. So I want to take a look at some of these pitchers here. And I know that Evan Petzold from the Freep did a list of players, and some of it I know that he's heard some things in reclamation projects and what have you. But of this list we have in here, we have Aaron Nola, we talked about Sonny Gray, Jordan Montgomery, Marcus Stroman, Shada Igmanaga. Thank you. Seth Lugo. And I don't know why, but I think I look at Seth Lugo as a future. Seth Lugo and a guy, and I mean, Nola would be nice, but I just see him going to a contender. But of this list, and there's Frankie Montez too, of course. And there's a couple other names I didn't put on here on purpose. So I was just trying to look at the bigger names. But all these names are on here, gentlemen, or names I haven't mentioned. Give me 2 pitchers that the Tigers should go after this offseason. I'll start with you, Chris.
Well, I mentioned when we had Beck on there, I thought that they should go after. Is it? Should I'm thinking of his name. The reliever, hard throwing reliever for the Cardinals.
Jordan Hicks.
Jordan Hicks, that's the one. I thought him. I like Waka. I like Nick Martinez. Is an interesting. Martinez kind of turned his career around when they moved him to the bullpen in San Diego, but he's been like a super reliever the last couple of years, like 100 innings plus. I could see the Tigers trying to pull a Lorenzen with him, right? Maybe stretching him out again, maybe altering his arsenal to get him starting again. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to pick every name on there, but I like Waka and I like Martinez, I guess, out of that group there.
I like Jack Flaherty a lot too, actually. And Detroit Degenerate reminded me of my Infinity Form. If he could get back to what he was before. Cameron, what about you?
Aaron Nola. He's probably my favorite. I mean, you have to at least try. You have to ask.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go out on a limb and say Kyle Gibson, because the past 10 years he's averaged, let me see here, 164 innings a year past 10 years. So if you vet starter, right-handed, I believe. Yes, right-handed. And he throws over 150 innings a year. And he's 36, so you can get him on a 1-2 year deal.
What about you, Uper?
Well, certainly I would not be hesitant in any way, shape, or form to spend $200 million on Yamamoto. Obviously, the Tigers, I do not have any faith they will opt out of that pursuit. And he may not want to be in Detroit. So, I mean, who knows? But that's where I would go. I'd go to the top of the market, of the international market, and bring him. But saying that that's probably not going to happen, I'm on Aaron Nola's train. And, Sonny Gray, I go back and forth. I think he would be a nice ad. I really do. But I'll tell you, I saw Seth Lugo pitch a couple times this year. The guy ain't bad. He's kind of sneaky. If that's where they end up going, that's probably on the Lorenzen level of signing, maybe even a little bit better. That'd be all right.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I get the feeling that guys like Lugo's going to end up getting like a 3 or 4 year deal. I think because didn't he? Yeah, he started. He always been kind of an up and down guy or a swingman for the Mets, and then where was he with? He was with the Padres, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And I think he looked pretty good as a starter, so I wouldn't shock me if he gets a multi-year deal. Montgomery, he made himself a lot of money this year. I think he would be a fun signing. Yeah, I mean, all those guys at the top would be an awful lot of fun, but I just, I get that Scott Harris feeling with everybody we talk. I think I mentioned Alex Wood the other day as a guy that Harris has signed before, and Tyler Malley, I always forget how to pronounce his name. He's a guy who's injured, but you could possibly get him on like a 2 year deal for a discount, and had he been healthy, he'd probably be in that Jordan Montgomery range of getting like a 5 year deal. So might be an interesting kind of, outside of the box move.
I still think that there's going to be, that's another name too. That's a good. There was a name in here that I could remember, and Detroit General brought him up was Paul Blackburn. That's a good name to bring in there too. But as far as Sonny Gray goes, I think Sonny Gray on a 2 year deal tops would be phenomenal. I think based off, you kind of wonder when the other shoe is going to fall off with him a little bit because he's had some wear and tear. But I don't know. I think like a guy like him, there's this guy I mentioned last week on the podcast, the Korean the guy who's pitching over in Korea.
McFetty.
Yeah. I think he would be. I think that's a guy who I really would see. Nick Blackburn. Yeah, not Nick Blackburn. Sounds like a guy in a band too, I think. But anyway, sorry, I got a text earlier and it was just like it's been screwing my speech ever since then. So, anywho, but yeah, there's a lot of reclamation projects they can work on too, and there's just a couple arms. But the one from Korea, I think that's a guy who could be put in a third or fourth starter and give the Tigers at least. You know what's really weird when you think about it? Heading into next year, right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't have a single starter that's throwing over 100 or over 120 innings.
Nope.
Heading into next year, do they?
Don't believe so.
I don't. I everybody, Manning keeps getting hurt. Skubal, I did half a season, then another half a season. Mize, did Mize get 120 over 2 years ago? I think he probably did, didn't he?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he had a
but-
3-WAR season, so I think.
Yeah, but certainly nobody who's thrown that many innings last year. So
Yeah,
Right,
Mize
maybe,
hit
I don't know.
150 and 21. So
what did Gibson Long pitch overall? Like 120, if you count the minor leagues, and same
Yeah.
with Olsen. Those two might have been 120, 130 range if you count
Yeah,
the minors.
barely. Yeah.
And Montero was 120, wasn't he? 119, something like that. So the young guys are the innings eaters. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're looking at a veteran starter for who the Tigers could go after, I mean I like your idea, Cameron, of Kyle Gibson because it does fit that holdover kind of thing, or kind of not holdover, but just kind of like a good bridge between, if, for example, Ty Madden makes some strides next year in Toledo, or Brent Hurdler, or maybe Flores. I mean, who knows? I mean, at this point, who the Tigers have next, I think Gibson would be a good placeholder for that. And Blake Snell, I like Blake Snell, but I mean, I think he's just it was qualifying offers 20 million. And I don't think that's going to happen, but a guy who,
none of the guys who got the qualifying offer accepted it. So they're all draft pick compensation for all those guys. Snell has been good. I just always where he's never, ever, ever been a guy who works deep into games. And maybe that's just the way baseball is going now, but I would still like a guy who could occasionally give you 7 or 8 innings.
yeah, there was a suggestion too. Cameron, was you that suggested Whit Merrifield earlier, or somebody made a suggestion about Whit Merrifield?
yeah, I suggested Whit Merrifield last week, just as a bridge guy and vet that can play second and third, and I think he's right-handed. Right,
We play some outfield too.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I know. I think Chris, you mentioned him before. Tiscar Hernandez too.
Well, yeah, I mean, before the Canna trade, he seemed like
Yeah.
a potential option. Like Teoscar Hernandez and Hunter Renfroe was kind of a power hitting corner outfielder. Still wouldn't mind one of those guys, I guess, but it does seem like that there might not be room for him now.
So here's a question from Samuel. He said, "What do it take from Casey Mize next year to prove that he isn't a bust? I know he's just removed from Tommy John surgery, but it still needs results. Just give me 100 innings
Yeah.
and a FIP
I mean,
of 3.25. I don't think that's too much to ask.
I think it's. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, be healthy, right? But yeah, that his rookie year was, or official first season was. He definitely wasn't a bust. Like the underlying metrics weren't great, but as Cameron said, he put up 3 WAR by Baseball Reference. It was because his ERA was pretty low, and he had some luck there. But he was like, I wouldn't consider Mize or Torkelson to be busts. I think they've gone past that area now. It's more about them establishing themselves as legitimate good big leaguers, which is still up in the air, I think, for both of them. But yeah, I mean, I guess anybody who gets injured could be a bust. If he comes back and he's throwing 90, then yeah, that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
Can they get 20 to 25 starts out of him this year? That would be interesting to see.
Yeah. I would just want 100, at least over 100 innings pitched. I think that if you can go out there and 20 to 25 starts, give them exactly just some stability on that, I would be fine with that. And that to me, that'd be more than I would be more than satisfied with that, because if it's one of those things where, especially with the splitter, you're not going to see that pitch very often now because he's just coming off surgery. I think he had 2 different types of surgery too.
Yeah, he had the Tommy John. He had back surgery too, and
Yeah.
and then there was talk about they basically completely reworked his delivery if they could, because he was basically starting over from scratch, and it sounded like things were looking good there. And then there was kind of like that weird, they shut down his side session after like 15 pitches or something like that, and the beat writers mentioned it, and they didn't know what was going on, and there was never really any more information about it. But last we heard, he was on the injury report as throwing his last bullpen, and then starting his regular winter conditioning. So I think he's back on track. It's just hard to know.
So I think he threw another bullpen after that whole finger soreness
Yeah.
thing, whatever. And then after that bullpen, AJ said they were going to give him a few weeks off because he had been rehabbing for close to a year at that point, or he'd been rehabbing all summer. So they just wanted to give him time off. And then last week he threw another bullpen. So
Yeah. According to Stando, he said that Dickerson said he was throwing a splitter, which I'm surprised he is, based off the surgery he had, because you don't see that splitter. So like Stando, it's splitto. You don't see that splitter right away, because they usually, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember doing an article about this. After Tommy John, you don't see anything that takes a lot of that torque right away.
Well, I mean, there's long been a belief that split finger leads to elbow injuries. I don't know if there's ever been any sort of concrete proof. I think the only real proof that is that throwing the ball very hard very often leads to elbow injury.
Yeah.
But I recall Masahiro Tanaka was a split finger guy, and he's one of the few pitchers I can remember who actually rehabbed his way out of Tommy John surgery. Like, just like they got the platelet-rich plasma injections or whatever, and just pitched right through it, and then it was fine. And he continued throwing the splitter, I think. So, I remember them talking about that. They said, I think that his splitter looked good, his fastball looked good, and I think it was really like his slider, his slurve was really looking good in the bullpen. So, I don't know. I'm optimistic for Casey Mize. You never know with guys coming back from injury, though.
Yeah, and
It would
again,
have been nice if they'd got him into the AFL for a few starts.
That would have been cool.
I
Yeah.
really thought that might happen. I did, but obviously did not come to fruition.
I think he's also a little bit burned out from everything too. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was something about him saying that he said something to the press. He said something to the press about that afterwards.
yeah, he took a few weeks off. AJ Hinch said he would be taking a few weeks off during the playoffs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
To rest, and then
that's perfectly fine. I mean, it's
that would have been maybe if he hadn't had those the very minor setback, they might have sent him out to the AFL just to get some innings, some live reps. But better to be safe than sorry, I guess, with a guy who's coming right back from injury. We've seen before where guys right there on the precipice of coming back and then re-injures the arm, and it's like a 3-year thing. Like, or Brent Honeywell, I think it was. He lost like 4 years.
Yeah.
yeah. Charles. So the next biggest need is, somebody was mentioning, talk about third base, and so looking at the third base options on the free agent market, there was, of course, Matt Chapman.
I think
Some guy
Candelario might be the better option. I don't think they're going to sign either of them, but
Yeah, there's also, I mean, but then it's a mixed bag after that. So it's Donovan Salerno from the Twins, who's 36 years old. Justin Turner's out there. Yeah, Brian Anderson. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, Gio Urshela. You have IKF, which was who mentioned him last week, was Khalifa, who can play multiple positions. That's a guy who seems to fit that Tigers motif of playing all over the field. But in terms of offense, like in terms of his WAR, it wasn't really productive last year at the plate.
you can't hit.
Yeah, can't hit. And
drop
the Tigers, I mean, like I know I said earlier, I wouldn't mind a defender who can hit, or who's a plus defender that can sacrifice the bat. I want to sacrifice a lot of all the bat.
And that's a problem. Like Matt Chapman in many ways would be ideal because he's a right-handed hitter. He's got some power. He's a very good defender, but I just he's never been a great hitter, and he feels a little bit like the third base version of Javi Baez. Like he'll walk a little bit, but you wonder if you probably have to give him like a 5-year deal, and it feels like he's already kind of becoming just a league average offensive player. And so in 4 or 5 years, you've got a huge anchor on the left side of your. They're stopping everything that goes that way, which is fine, but and I guess you can't. I don't know. It just feels like they'd be better off looking for smaller, shorter solutions. I like Justin Turner as a hitter. I don't think he can play third base anymore, which is a bummer because that would be a nice 1-year deal.
So Matt Chapman, I think he hit 140 WRC plus in April, and then the rest of the year he was like mid 80s WRC plus. So he just rode a hot month to having a good year.
Yeah, it happens a lot, When Placido Polanco got let go by the Tigers, he hit like 420 for a month, and then we went to the All-Star game, but he actually kind of sucked the rest of the year. But Tiger fans were up in arms about that one,
Yeah, because the guy that you replaced him with, Grady Sizemore,
Scott
Sizemore, yeah.
Wow. Scott Sizemore. Grady Sizemore, who, by the way, is now the white, who is apparently viewed by some in Cleveland as still a god in some cases. I don't know why, but anyway, he's now a hitting coach with the White Sox. But yeah, Scott Sizemore, it was one of those things where I just didn't understand when it happened. Well, you don't sign Polanco back. And Scott Sizemore is your solution. No, that was just them being cheap. So,
when you think about Chapman at third, certainly the glove and the power is great. I agree with Chris about having to go 5 years, and you see some chinks in the armor. Not good, That's why I might stay out of that as well. I'm all for spending on premium free agents. It's that middle tier. That's where you kind of can sink yourself sometimes.
Yeah, and I think I don't know who was it. Somebody had mentioned in the chat, like that had enough about these big, long contracts, Jordan Zimmerman, Javi Baez, and I get it. Like that's up to the ownership that you could spend your way out of that, or you could just use that as an anchor. But I don't think the Rangers are regretting spending all that money on Simeon and Seager. Right. I don't think they're regretting it at all. So it's just a matter of making sure you get the right ones. And we talked about it before. This Tigers renaissance doesn't happen without Maglio Ordonez and Pudge Rodriguez, and they spent money on those guys. It's. I mean, they had guys internally too, but sometimes you do need to spend money, and so you just got to make sure it's the right guys. And I'm not sure if Chapman's the right guy. There are people who are paid to figure that out.
The flip side is I saw a tweet today. It was just a straight tweet. I don't know who it was by. It doesn't really matter. If that guy's listening, I apologize. But he was all excited about this. He lists this Tigers lineup. Man, this has me jacked. And really, it was basically all guys coming back from this year with Canna and Colt Keith. Like, oh, okay. You can be excited about that, but I don't know how much that has moved the needle from a middling offense to a really competitive offense. So something's got to be done. So if they're taking a chance on Chapman and thinking that he can hit them 25 homers and play a great third base, and that's going to make a meaningful difference, okay, I'll roll the dice with you, but it's hard to get too enthused about that one either. But they got to make something's got to happen if they intend to win this division.
So what if the Tigers went and got a DH? We're all assuming AJ just wants to rotate that spot, but what if they got Justin Turner or JD Martinez? Or
I love JD. I'd bring him back in a heartbeat, wouldn't even hesitate. But I've been thinking that the Canna move kind of precludes it. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, no, I think that would be, if you want a right-handed power bat on a short-term deal, that's probably the move, right? One of those two guys. Now, whether they want to come, who knows what their options are. It wouldn't shock me if the Dodgers re-signed JD Martinez because he was pretty productive for him last year. Yeah, I would be totally fine with either of those things. I would lock Justice Bigby in a room with JD Martinez and say, okay, listen, like all you have to do is do this, and then those line drives to right field or home runs to right field. I think that would be great, but I think you're right, Cameron. I think that that Hinch, after years of having to use Cabrera as DH, Hinch is just going to have a field day, cycling through DH every single day. Like, oh, and I do think Riley Green's probably going to play a fair amount of DH to begin the year for the first month or two, partially to keep him from protecting from himself. He's just a dude who's never going to stop diving for balls. Unfortunately, maybe he can pull like a Ronald Acuna and just go, you know what, I'm just not going to try anymore. And I mean, we don't necessarily want that, but if it's better than the alternative of him breaking himself from diving. So I do think that they're going to kind of cycle through the DH, but I would, I'd be all for JD or Justin Martin. Wasn't Turner, Justin Martin. Who the hell's that? Golfer?
Yeah, that's a golfer. By the way, I think AJ is somewhere seeing this.
Well, we say that now, but then at some point this season, it's going to be Javi Baez DH, and everybody's going to be like, "What are we doing?"
Yeah, so we did get a couple questions in the chat. We did get one from Jesus Pinto, who wanted to know if Langford is a generational player for the Rangers.
Maybe.
I mean, he had one hell of a professional debut. I'll say that. You never know. If he's up in the majors to start the year or doing the same thing, then yeah, maybe. But I mean, he's the kind of the guy that everybody wanted, but it didn't go that way. And yeah, I don't know. It was just a small sample in the minors, relatively small sample. So it's way too early to tell if you're a generational player. He looks pretty damn good. I'll say that.
If you watched him at Florida last year, you couldn't help but be impressed. There just weren't many weaknesses that, the untrained eye could see on television anyway. He put up the numbers. He transferred it to the pros immediately without even as much as a hiccup. I'm going to try to stay consistent. When we go back to a year before that draft, maybe 6 months, whatever, there were 5 guys, right? And that were really head and shoulders above everybody else in the minds of most. And I always said if they get any of those 5, hey, it's a roll of dice. We'll take them and we'll just move forward. They got Max Clark. He was one of those 5. So was Wyatt Langford. But, it's too early to tell. We'll just have to see down the road. This is, I hate to kind of cop out on it, but it's something we'll know more in 4 years.
Yeah. By the way, there was I did wanted to bring up 2 things too. Somebody brought up this in the chat and I'm glad they did. And that was what Brian Cashman said about Giancarlo Stanton. And one of the comments he said, I don't know if you guys caught this line, was, quote, Giancarlo Stanton's 40 time must be 40 minutes at this point.
Wait, Cashman actually said that? I didn't see that. I saw the other one. There's no way he said that.
That was a parody account.
That can't be. Yeah.
That was definitely parody. But he did say this, and he had he was talking about, what was he? He said, we have to get Stanton up and running. He said he's injury prone. We have lived and known that, but he's never not hitting when he's not playing. And this year it was the first time that's happened. We try to limit, he's down, but I'm not going to tell you he's going to play every game because he's not. He's going to wind up getting hurt again, more than likely, because that seems to be part of his game. But I know when he's right and healthy, other than this past year, the guy's a great hitter and has been for a while, end quote. But of course, they didn't add the end part of it to the quote. They just were basically saying he's going to wind up getting hurt again, more than likely, because that seems to be part of his game. But I mean, he went off on a rant. I mean, he was very pissed off, and he was just kind of like, and rightfully so. And Yankee fans on Twitter want him gone every single day.
Yeah.
So,
this reminds me. This is kind of a bit of a stretch, but it reminds me of an old Simpsons episode where Kent Brockman, the news reporter, is talking about a storm, and he said something along the lines of, "He said, think it's sexist to name a hurricane after a woman. You've obviously never seen ladies fighting over clothes at a discount rack," or something like that. And Marge just says, well, it's true, but he shouldn't say it. And that's, I think, what you got with Brian Cashman there. Like, he's right. Stanton is constantly hurt. he's not built to play baseball every day because he's too much muscle, right? He
Yeah.
and Judge are just too large and too muscular um but I don't know what else you want him to say or what. Like I'm surprised he said it. It wouldn't shock me if there's some sort of formal grievance filed from the players union or something like that. Like if he's even implying that Stanton is some kind of malingerer or not, trying to play hard.
Right.
But yeah, the dude he's just constantly hurt. It's unfortunate because he's one of the most impressive power hitters of all time. Really, I mean, nobody hits the
Agreed.
ball harder.
Such a shame. I mean, yes, the exit velocity, legendary numbers there. I just go back, and he was when he was at the Marlins. I'm in Arizona to visit the in-laws. I take my daughter to Chase Field specifically because the Marlins were in town. Wanted to see him play. Hits a home run. I think he had 2 homers and a triple that night. He was like a godlike figure out there. He's got that perfect physique. He's tall. At that time, he was still running well. It was just a sight to behold. I mean, one of the home runs he hit was just truly frightening how hard it was hit. And, you think, man, that's a budding superstar, Hall of Famer. And the injuries have just piled up and piled up. It's not going to happen, but one hell of an athlete.
I mean, he's a 21st century Yankee. Like it seems like that's happened with every free agent or anybody they've ever traded for. It's Mitsui, it's Giambi, it's all those guys. They get them when they're older and they have a year or two that are really good and then they fall apart. And the Yankees fans get all upset because I don't know why. Because I guess because they're not winning every single year, but it's not like it's precluding them from getting anybody else. They've got tons of money. They're one of the favorites to land Juan Soto.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the Yankees have bigger problems than Stanton getting hurt. So, I mean, if Stanton gets hurt, I don't think it makes or breaks the Yankee season because
they haven't been bunting nearly enough.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Cashman was bragging about having the smallest analytical department in their division. Like, why would you brag about that? Like, why is Hal taking advice from Aaron Judge? Like, why is Aaron Judge valuing batting average and RBIs? Like, it seems like a huge mess over there. I almost feel bad for Yankee fans.
Yeah, but then I don't because they are I mean, I don't feel bad because every time I look at a podcast listing and there's like 800 different podcasts that are listed from the Yankees. Exaggeration of the 800, but there's 10 different Yankee podcasts you can listen to, and they're all in the top 20. It blows my mind anytime. Anyway,
I mean, it's a great baseball town. It's
is.
the greatest franchise in baseball history, and so there's going to be a little bit of arrogance and all that comes with that, and the feeling that like they deserve to win every year, and it's super annoying to all of us. But I get it. Like you expect great things, you're used to it, and then they're going on 20 plus years, I guess, with only one championship, which would be nice for the Tigers, but that's not nice for the Yankees. They're used to a couple a decade at least. So yeah, we're all like, playing the world's smallest violins, but I don't know. It's kind of fun to watch from afar, but I understand the Yankees fans being loud and obnoxious about it. It's just so strange that they've now blamed it on analytics. So they're just looking for whatever they can.
That's just a bullshit. That's just a bullshit excuse. I'm sorry. It's just flat out. And the way, if you go on their spring training complex in Tampa, it's a beautiful facility. Everything's well ran down there. They have all the resources in the world. You just made some stupid decisions on what you spent on, and their farm system is not as deep as it used to be. I mean, look at Somerset. After they lost Jason Dominguez, that team was not the same. After they lost quite a bit. I mean, even Austin Wells going up there too at some point. That system is not as deep. We did get 2 questions offline. One, somebody was asking about Ty France as a trade possibility because he was mentioned on MLB trade rumors as a offseason candidate. Also was in the same Vaughn Grissom, who was going to be part of the trade. It was actually being named as part of one of the trades this year in the Eduardo Rodriguez sweepstakes as a possibility. Do you remember that, Chris? The Vaughn Grissom?
Yeah, there was the rumor that he was kind of the main piece going to the Tigers in return for Eduardo Rodriguez, but we never had any but obviously never happened, and we never had any more confirmation or any more rumors about that. So, I don't know. Ty France is basically just a first base DH type, isn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think he can play defense. He's been a pretty good hitter. So if you want to bring, like as we said, you want to bring in a DH alone, then that would I'd be okay with that. But he didn't do a whole lot this last season. You can now hit 250 with 12 home runs in 158 games. That's not doesn't move the needle much for me.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't seem here. Yeah, and by the way, yeah, the Padres owner did pass away today, as
only
that
63.
Yeah. Wow. Really
yes.
young.
Yeah, I'm trying to get his name right now, and so I apologize. It seems like it was Peter. Yeah, Peter
Seidler.
Yep, Peter Seidler. It kind of looks like Kurt Bavakawa a little bit, actually. Uper.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
He also looked. Did he have cancer or something? He looked kind of thin, kind of little.
Yeah.
They said it was an after an illness. They didn't specify what it was. So whenever they don't specify, I assume it's cancer of a bad area, the butt
Yeah.
of some sort.
It's a shame.
But yeah, what really sucks is that he sounded like he was kind of a Mike Ilitch kind of owner, a guy who wanted to use his money to make the team better and wanted to try to compete and wanted to win and wanted it for the fans. And they're surprisingly few, not surprisingly, but shockingly few guys like that in the big leagues now, and it'd be nice to have more of them.
Yeah. All right. On that note, one last question, and that was Sammy wanted to know: do you have any intel on what the Tigers would have gotten for Erod? I don't lose sleep over it, but I do ponder it. Catcher, there was a AA catcher that was rumored, and I think that was supposedly an infielder too, but I know catcher for sure. Infielder was just more of a speculation thing.
I don't think it was. It wasn't something that was going to alter the future of the Tigers organization. Remember, it's still a rental, but it was. I think it was going to be, two top 30 prospects in the system, I would say. But yeah, it didn't work out, and there you go.
All right. So on that note, thank you so much for listening to the Motor City Metrics live here on YouTube. And of course, you're listening on the podcast. You're listening to us on the Believe Network, which hosts over 500 different types of podcasts, ranging from comedy to pop culture. If you're a fan of USC, they got a podcast with Lendell White. I mean, if you're a Chargers fan, they got anybody remembers Lorenzo Neal? Probably not, but anyway,
Running back.
Yeah, there is a podcast for every single thing you can think of when it comes to sports and pop culture. Amon Green, he's got a gamers podcast too, by the way.
Yeah, no, he I don't know where he went, but they had him come be the football coach and the head of the esports team. And after a little bit, he quit coaching football to focus on esports.
That's pretty badass.
I mean,
He's an interesting guy.
Sort of. Yeah.
He was like Yoenis Cespedes' trainer for a while when he was still in Cuba before he came to the United States.
Oh, the famous
I know
Cespedes, the very famous Cespedes video, his hype video before he became a free agent.
That was Amon Green was there with him.
That's wild.
Amon Green with them, Nebraska, right? I got that right?
Yeah, Nebraska.
Okay. But he was great with the Packers.
He got drafted by the Seahawks, and the Packers absolutely picked their pocket for him. They sent him like a nondescript player who busted out. And then Amon Green became one of the 3 best running backs in the league for about a 5-year stretch.
Yeah. And now you can listen to his podcast on the Believe Network.
The Believe Network. Yeah, there you go. So if you want to check that out, or if you want to even check out the just Believe in the Nationals or Under the Winged Helmet, which is a Michigan podcast or Michigan State podcast, I'm sure. Alliance podcast. There's one with Glover Quinn. And
nice.
Yeah. So there you go. If you want to listen to Lions, or there's Mac Nation. So if you like Mac football, there you go. There's another one for you. Yeah. Eric Snow former point guard Eric Snow does the Michigan State podcast. So
he played for the 76ers, was it for a while too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Along with Iverson. Yeah.
Oh, Samuel's gonna be in town from Montreal. That's gonna be cool. By the way, I was waiting for him to come on the podcast. I was sporting the Expos hat earlier. Shout out to
one thing I did see that, and this is neither here nor there, but they're talking about NBA is talking about expanding some more, and they mentioned
really?
Montreal. They mentioned Montreal and Mexico City as possible, if not probable, locations. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, somebody made a reference of that Eric Snow played with Matt Harbring. So for any Cleveland fan out there, that's a nice pull there.
Is he from Georgia Tech?
Who, Matt Harping? Yeah, I think Mike Harping is. Yeah, I know a super fan of Matt Harping. It's strange because she talks about him like it's the next coming of the biggest thing. But mad respect for it. She has a jersey or two, but
he's no Wally Zerbiak.
Oh yeah, that's true. Wally Zerbiak. But yeah, there's, you know what? Speaking of the NBA too, they have the in-season tournament going on right now,
which I haven't bothered to figure that out, and I don't want to.
Basically, a bunch of random games across the schedule are considered part of the tournament. And then, like, I forgot who the Pistons played yesterday, 2 days ago, but that was considered part of the tournament. And then, like, today's game's like a normal game, I believe. And then, like, a week from now, they'll have another tournament game. I don't know.
Just mark it in the loss column for the Pistons. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, they lost tonight, so they're on a 9-game losing streak.
I saw something. I saw a stat that I think Chris Castanelli posted that about the Pistons since they made a trade, and I'm trying to remember who the player they traded. That they're 4-something since the trade of. He retweeted this. The Pistons are 4-30 since the trading Sadiq Bey for James Wiseman last year.
I mean, come on, it's a bullshit. I don't play that game.
That's a Miggy there for you. But yeah. What's the incentive to care? You're right. Sammy want to know? I don't know. I don't even know what the marketing is so bad on the tournament. I literally just, the only reason why I knew about it was somebody I know tweeted about it. That what do they win? Do they win a special trophy? They win nothing. I don't know.
I assume that there's something. I don't know if it affects playoff seeding or if there's money involved or whatever, but no, I give them credit for trying something new, but I think it's kind of convoluted.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it's tough to do a tournament in the middle of the season.
Sounds like they made up as they went. So
the winning team earns the NBA Cup and its players $500,000 each. So, and if you players, I don't know what league minimum is in NBA, but
yeah,
that's sort of what I said. That if everybody complains about the baseball regular season not meaning enough when these other teams make the World Series, so give out a big trophy for having the best record at the end of the season. Make a big deal out of that.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, all this. Yeah, the only thing that matters is the championship game. You're absolutely right, Tiger Town. On that note, like I said, unless there's some breaking news that happens this week, we'll see you next Tuesday for our Thanksgiving show. And then after that, just a programming note of sorts. After next week will be my last show for a few weeks as I take care of some personal stuff. So the guys will be carrying on as some fun. So
yeah, I will say that we didn't mention it, but Friday is the non-tender date, and so you will probably see the Tigers non-tender Austin Meadows. I don't know if there's anybody else that they might, but there's some weird roster, gymnastics they can do there, where if they cut him today, he'd have to go through waivers. But if they do it on Friday, they could theoretically immediately turn around and sign him to a minor league free agent deal if they want to, or a big league free agent deal that's heavily incentive laden. But so that's something to look for this Friday.
Yeah. So expect something probably for this weekend then. Thank you for Chris for reminding me about that. So other than that, have a good week, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.